All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. It's 6:30. We're so glad you're here for this town hall meeting. We have all of council with us. I also have Brian Funderburk, our city manager, Jim Grabenhorst, our economic development director, and our legal counsel, David Berman, who's going to give me evil eye if I say anything I'm not supposed to say. He's going to throw things, he said. So thank you so much for being here. We are very, very excited that we're able to share this additional information with all of you. We're going to have a brief overview, just kind of to get everybody on the same page. Probably if you're in this room or if you're watching on Facebook Live, and we are streaming this on Facebook Live, you probably have some pretty good information about what's been going on at Bayside. But I'm going to go ahead and give a brief overview so that we kind of all start from the same spot. But we're going to spend the majority of time at this town hall meeting taking your questions and hopefully providing sufficient answers to you all. In the back of the room, I've got Drew and Denise, and they are streaming this on Facebook Live. We'll also be looking at comments on Facebook Live if there's questions that come out in that live stream. This will also be available on our Facebook page at a later time for viewing for those people that couldn't be here, and if you want to view this again for some reason, you'll be able to do that. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. I'm going to try to do this without doing this. So, you know, you've seen the articles about Bayside, you've seen the city posts, you've probably seen the social media rhetoric, and so we're just going to make sure we have a little bit of time to talk about all this. You know, why did we sue Bayside? Why is Rowlett proposing to purchase the Bayside land south of Interstate 30 and to potentially release the lawsuit? And what are our next steps? So we're going to talk about all of that. So from, you know, early on, we've been working on this public-private partnership, you know, for years, actually. But we started entering into agreements in 2015. And proposal for the Bayside development included a 500-room resort and conference center, a world-class marina, mixed-use entertainment and restaurants, mixed-use office and retail, an 8-acre crystal lagoon, a 1-acre show fountain, 45 acres of parks and open space, 4+ miles of hike and bike trails, 1.75 million square feet of commercial space, and 3,000 residential units. So that was the original vision that developed starting in 2015 through a series of agreements that we entered into with our development partner in a public-private partnership. You know, from the earliest images of this project, this was deemed as a destination entertainment development and projected to bring over $1 billion in taxable value to our community and to bring an amenity to our community that has never been available to our residents, that is really sought by many of our residents. Sorry for this. The original vision for Bayside and the public-private partnership really met many of our goals that were outlined in Realize Rowlett 2020, which was our comprehensive plan that was put in place in 2011. Some of those that the Bayside was projected to, some of those goals that the Bayside development was projected to meet include growing the city's economy through diversification of jobs and business opportunities, making Rowlett a place that's attractive to people at all stages of their life, investing in places of lasting value and distinctive character, using Lake Ray Hubbard and Rowlett's natural assets to create a distinctive identity and the quality of life desired by the community, diversify our mobility options and connect activity areas, create centers with mix of activities at key locations, and fund public investment that leverages desired private investment. So those were absolutely key criteria that led us down this path with the Bayside development. So, you know, how did we get to where we're at today? Why did the city decide to file a lawsuit in January of 2019 against Bayside? In July, the city filed a notification to the developer that they were in default of their development agreements. And the developer subsequently, a few weeks later, presented a plan, a revised plan to the vision of Bayside. It's important to understand that the original vision was a public-private partnership agreed to between the city and the developer. And the commitments that were put in place were agreed to by both parties. At the end of July, when the developer presented their revised plan for Bayside South, it had several things that were missing or changes to the development, including no 8-acre Crystal Lagoon, no 1-acre show fountain, no trolley, a 23% decrease in acreage for commercial space, including restaurant and entertainment destination retail, and a 68.7% increase in acreage dedicated to residential units, and 152 more residential units than originally proposed. So that was the revisions to the plan that were presented to City Council at the end of July. On September 18th in 2018, the City Council formally voted to reject the revised plans for the Bayside development. And then we continued to try to come to agreement with the Bayside parties between that date and the date that we filed the lawsuit, which was January 4th of 2019. So those negotiations were not successful, and then City Council voted to file a formal lawsuit claiming breach of contract and seeking damages as a result of that breach of contract. And that was in January 4th of 2019. So recently, what was the date that we signed the agreement? No, the next agreement. The agreement to purchase, March 8th. Sorry, I didn't have that date in my mind. So on March 8th, as you all are well aware, I'm sure, we entered into an agreement to purchase the south parcel of land from Bayside. And why did we do that? Well, first and foremost, our goal is to make sure that we facilitate development of the land in a manner that optimizes its value to the citizens of Rowlett. Lawsuits can be very, very costly and take a long time, and our ultimate goal was to get this land developed. So we believed the best course of action was try to negotiate a purchase of the land south of Interstate 30 and to subsequently have that developed by a new development partner. So that's why we entered into the agreement to purchase the land. Most pressing in all of this was a time-sensitive commitment that we had with the state of Texas that we obtained in the last legislative session 2 years ago, which was to get a 10-year tax rebate from the state, which would help us fund the conference center. That tax credit is set to expire in 10 years, and it has a value projected at over $50 million. So we were very concerned about getting this land back in a state that could be developed so that we can take advantage of this tax credit that we had the legislature approved 2 years ago. So, the settlement was deemed the best way to meet our ultimate goal, and that was something that this entire council was in agreement with. So what are some of the key terms and conditions of the agreement to purchase this land? Through a future development partner, we will acquire this Bayside land south of Interstate 30 and the marina for a price of $37,013,000. And then we will simultaneously convey that land and marina to a future development partner. We have no intention as a city of Rowlett to own this land. We have no intention as a city of Rowlett to develop this land. We worked with a development partner in the original agreement, and that's what we proposed to do as a result of purchasing the land south of Interstate 30. Again, that is a decision that was unanimous by this city council, that the only way we would do this transaction is if we immediately, simultaneously, sold the land to a development partner for development. We're not in the business of developing property. So we're going to acquire the 119-acre tract. We got to bifurcate, separate the original 262 acres between the 143-acre north acre parcel north of Interstate 30 and the 119-acre south of Interstate 30, so that each owner will be able to develop independently under the zoning agreements specific to their parcels. We need to transfer the license of the Crystal Lagoon previously purchased by the Bayside entities to the city. We need to transfer ownership of the marina, including all licenses, assets, and improvements to the city. And part of the agreement is that the Bayside the Bayside parties have agreed to a 30-foot wide easement along Dow Rock Road and Interstate 30 frontage road to assure that utilities can be delivered to the south tract. We have a 30-day due diligence period in which to provide title commitment and review and either accept or reject existing agreements, review marina operating details, conduct inspections, and other sale-related matters. And then we have a 120-day closing period, which the expiration of that is July 8th, 2019. On closing, if closing occurs, and only if closing occurs, the lawsuit would be dismissed. So, what do we have to do between now and that 120-day period, which is a very short period, by the way, to close a transaction like this? We need to complete the requirements that are spelled out in the settlement agreement. We need to amend our tax increment reinvestment zone, number 2, to bifurcate the project's revenues and obligations between the north and south tracts. We need to obtain a transfer and assignment of the license from the Crystal Lagoon. We need to begin to design $6.8 million in off-site sewer improvements that will be funded by the developer. We need to negotiate a purchase and sale agreement and a development agreement with a future development partner. We will collaborate with Bayside entities to ensure the TxDOT bridge enhancements are included. And if we close the transaction by July 8th, 2019, we need to file a motion to dismiss the lawsuit. This last page in the PowerPoint is just a copy of our FAQs. Those are available on our website. There is a March Mayor's Spotlight. Where was that located? Is it on the table out there? Where was the Mayor's Spotlight? On the table back there. Laura in the back room raising her hand with the red blouse. There's Mayor's Spotlights back there. This was the March 2009, whoops, that's the wrong one. Anyway, the March 2009 Mayor's Spotlight is all about this agreement to purchase the land south of I-30, including some of the history and the next steps. Most of the stuff I just discussed, but in more detail. So pick that up on your way out. It's a monthly Mayor's Spotlight. It's always really important information. I hope that you will subscribe to that. On our website is the press release and the mayor's statements as a result of this agreement to purchase the land. There's FAQs, and that's my conclusion of my summary comments. Did I miss anything, Council, Brian, before we start taking questions? Everybody good? Okay, where are mics for questions?
Okay, Mark's got the one for the question.
Mark McAvoy, our Assistant City Manager, has a mic. Anybody else? Okay, so raise your hand. If Mark hands you the microphone, we'll recognize your question first. And if you would, please stand and state your name and then ask your question.
I'm Lenita Akers, live in Rowlett, right at the end of Dow Rock and Miller Road. My concern is that we've got, yes, the issue going on with the south of 30, but we have the north that's building up tremendously, and already people are moving in, and nothing has been done with infrastructure. I mean,
Nothing has been done. What? I just couldn't hear you.
With infrastructure. We've got Miller Road that is still a 2-lane, terrible road, and you've got all this traffic that's already there and already coming in, and it's just going to get worse, and yet nothing's been done. You don't see anything being done. And you've got such limited access, and now you've got the exit from I-30 coming onto Dow Rock at that complex. They're adding a light, which now we're going to have the same problem that we had years ago about exiting and all that exiting traffic going back onto 30. And all the plans are great, but what about us trying to get home? I mean, if there's a wreck, if there's anything, you've got Miller Road loaded, you got 66 loaded, and there's nowhere else to go.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. I'm going to address that. I didn't hear a question. There was comments, but I'm going to address some of that. So in our 2018 bond, which is going to be funded over the next 3 years, it was very important to us that we approved two very strategic, specific projects. One was the widening of Miller Road between the railroad tracks sorry, I got a hair in my face. The widening of Miller Road between the railroad tracks at Paddle Point Park down to Dal Rock. So that road is going to be widened, and we're going to put sidewalks in there. That was a key strategic road that we dedicated significant bond dollars to for that very reason. The other road that we are dedicating bond dollars to is Chisa from Dal Rock to Miller Road. And that was a tough decision because Chisa north of Miller Road also needs improvements, but we didn't have enough funds to do both. But we do understand how important that traffic flow is in that whole area. And that's why that section of Chisa got priority from funding major improvements in that road from our 2018 bond. The other thing that's going on is, the improvements on Interstate 30, hopefully you know something about, those weren't even on plans with TxDOT until we started talking to TxDOT about the Bayside development. And this city and this city staff worked incredibly hard with TxDOT to get those improvements approved for Interstate 30. So some of those improvements include redoing of the Dal Rock interchange. There'll be a new, that'll be a one-way road. There'll be a new north-south road just west of Dal Rock that will serve between the north and south sections. And Interstate 30 is slated for expansion of the interior shoulder, because what happens on Interstate 30, if there's an accident, you can't get off on that shoulder in the interior side, and that causes Interstate 30 to back up significantly. So Interstate 30 is going to be expanded by moving it a little bit right and putting a shoulder in on the interior. And then also there's going to be a separate road structure, eastbound and westbound, which are going to basically be service roads on a completely separate bridge structure, 2 lanes each way, 3 lanes each way, plus biking and walking trail each way between Bass Pro Shop and Ridge Road. The other problem with I-30 is that, when there's an accident, there's nowhere else to go but 66. And that's been true regardless of Bayside. So those improvements to Interstate 30 were something we worked very, very hard on. Part of it has been funded, and the other part of it is getting priority in funding. So we're very, very happy about that. Anything you want to add on that, Jim? Was that Brian?
I just wanted to add, Mayor, that the portion of that between Bass Pro Shop and Dal Rock is about $138 million or so. That part is funded. As a matter of fact, they're already working on that. You can see out there the little boat that's been going around the barge, that's been doing the depth measurements and where the pylons have to go when they build the outer lanes. So that part's funded moving forward. But the other project from Dal Rock all the way to 205 is really the next segment, and we're close with Rockwall and Rockwall County also to try to get that project done as well. But I think the one thing I want to add is like anything else with new development and construction, is that the infrastructure around it takes time. And so, as the mayor said, we ultimately want to rebuild Chisa all the way up to Merritt Road, but that's going to take a segment of several years. The other thing about Miller Road is that, yes, we are expanding it. As you know, we've already expanded the west side. Now we'll be expanding the east side, but then you still have the bridge. And so at some point, that's got to be taken care of as well. So it's going to take some years before we can get all these improvements done.
Mark, can you get the next question?
Ron Free, 7309 Kingston Road, Rowlett, Texas.
You've done this before.
Yes, ma'am. Many, many times back in the older days. I'm sorry that I kind of dropped out of Rowlett politics until now. Anyway, what studies?
Welcome back, question mark?
What studies were done that said we need a convention center, and we need 300 more apartments, and we need mixed use? I see empty land all over Rowlett. I just drove from Dow Rock Road to here. Traffic is already backed up all the way to the George Bush. Traffic coming off 30 is backed up as far as I could see. I couldn't see it any farther. But how much study did you do that we needed another area almost like the harbor, when the harbor was open like 3 or 4 years and then filed bankruptcy? And you know, you go over down during the week and there's no traffic, you can park anywhere. You go on the weekend, sure, you can park all over the place. But what determined the need for all this high-priced development?
So I'm going to address some of this, then I'm going to turn over to Jim. So be ready, Jim, to talk about the studies. So, you know, this piece of property is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the city of Rowlett. You know, we don't have anything like this in the Rowlett. That peninsula is prime real estate. The city of Dallas determined to depark that land. They went to their voters, and the voters in the city of Dallas voted to depark that land.
I wonder why.
And, you know, that's a decision that Dallas made and the voters made because they wanted to obtain funds to fund their parkland for their residents within their interior of the city of Dallas. You know, when that becomes available, was very, very important for the city of Rowlett to annex that land into our community. We're talking about an opportunity with $1 billion of investment into this community that can bring huge amount of tax dollars and infrastructure improvements and amenities to our city. I understand your concern. I understand your comments. I also know that in 1980, this town was made up of 7,500 residents. And in 2019, we're estimated to have 63,000 residents. This same story could be told about DART coming into the city. This same story could be told about PGBT coming into the city. There's so many needs in this community, not unlike all North Texas communities. The infrastructure needs in this community are great. The infrastructure needs in all North Texas communities are great. There is not one budget except maybe Frisco, because it's such a new city and everything that it's developing is new. I would reckon to say there's not another city in North Texas that isn't underwater from a budget standpoint with their infrastructure. It's just a fact. So to have this opportunity to bring this type of investment into our community, to provide an area with incredible amenities and a destination for not only our residents, but for Texas and for the country, you know, a destination like no other, that's very, very important and very important to the city of Rowlett and to the future of our community. So with that said, do you want to talk about the studies, one of you?
I do want to add this, Mayor, before I turn it over to Jim, and that is simply that the mayor is making a really good point about Dallas. Some of our earliest conversations with Dallas led us to understand their intent to develop that. Some of the very first conversations we had with them is that they were willing to sell us the north part, but they wanted to develop the south part themselves. And quite frankly, the council was really concerned with what that meant. What would they develop? We did not know. So our choice was either that we do it, in other words, we control that, incorporate that land in Rowlett so we can make those decisions, or let Dallas do that. And we did not want to do that. So when they deparked it, just so you understand, they did their own study, and what they determined is that only about 15% of the people using the park were Dallas residents. Everybody else was Rowlett, Rockwall, Heath. And so that really kind of helped their citizens understand that, you know what, why are we paying for a park and all the maintenance for it when our own citizens don't really even use it? And they had other needs, as the mayor said, in Dallas. And that is one of the main reasons why They went forward with the election. It failed the first time. Then it went back again, and it passed. And at that point, that meant Dallas could have decided who developed it because the land was in Dallas. It was City of Dallas land, annexed as if it was in the City of Rowlett contiguous boundary. And that meant they could have made all the development decisions themselves. And I think that is probably the most strategic decision our council made, which was that we needed to make sure that we were in control of what happened there. Jim, do you want to speak to some of the contracts and studies?
Regarding studies for the need for a hotel conference center, so the city, along with the developer, hired third-party independent researchers. Company's name for the hotel conference center study was HVS. They're a national company that does these types of studies for hotel conference facilities. So they validated the need for a conference facility. They helped make recommendations on the size of the number of rooms needed, as well as the size for the conference center space. And then the overall feasibility for the rest of the development plan for the project was a company based out of Austin, another independent third-party company called RCLCO. They tested the feasibility of the plan that the mayor talked about earlier, including some of the amenity packages. And then obviously the city also talked with the real estate community and talking with brokers in the area to help validate the need and the demand in the area. So between the city, the developer, as well as there were bonds issued for a lot of the infrastructure associated with this project. So in order for bondholders to be interested in acquiring it, these types of studies were needed to validate the feasibility of it.
Thank you, Brian and Jim. Mark, if you could take the next question.
Thank you. Sammy Walker, 30-year resident in Rowlett. I'm like most people. I'm excited about the possibility of culminating this deal with Bayside. I'm a little bit concerned of what the good news, bad news is. I'm an internal optimist, but I'm also a realist. What do you figure, Mayor, is the best case scenario and the worst case scenario in 120 days? What may or may not happen? Best case scenario, everything goes nice and smooth. We all know that. That's what we want, and it very well may happen. What happens if a developer gets you over a barrel, the city over a barrel? Because I know developers. They got muscle, and they got, I'm fearful of developers. What do you say to that, dear?
So, Sammy, thank you. So, you know, certainly one of my greatest fears, but we're so much further today than we were before we filed the lawsuit and before we entered into this agreement to purchase the land. You know, we were not going to accept the revised development plan. It was something that was not acceptable to our residents and was not acceptable to this council. So, you know, if this agreement does not come through, we're not putting up the money to buy this land. The future developer is. We didn't put up the money for the escrow. Okay, that's not going to happen. We're not going to own this land. We're going to simultaneously sell it to a developer. So best case scenario is that happens within the 120 days. And the basic vision, the overall vision that we have for this south parcel of land comes to fruition. And this city realizes the benefits of that investment, and we have an incredible destination attraction for this community, not just for our residents, but for the region. That's what we are trying to accomplish. Worst case scenario, quite frankly, is it doesn't close in 120 days, and we're still in the same position with the lawsuit that we have filed because there has been a breach, in our opinion, a breach of contract, and we believe we have a strong case on that lawsuit. Thank you.
Good evening. Diane Levin, 7409 Harbor Drive.
You don't have to give your address.
Okay, well, he did, so anyway. So the original purchase of the property was 262 acres at right around $30 million. This new deal is 119 acres at $37 million. I know that doesn't really affect the city, as you stated that the developer will be buying the property. I guess my question is, has a survey been done on the south side alone? Is that fair market value? Will it affect our return on the investment? And the revenues that are generated from the project, will that be funneled into the city or just back into the project alone?
Okay, so if I forget this last part, bring me back around, Diane, so thank you for your question. So I will say that the $37 million was a fair price. When both the north and south track were purchased by the city of Rowlett and simultaneously delivered to the original developer, we were just coming out of the Great Recession. From that time to the current date, you know, there has been a huge amount of development across Texas and across North Texas, and market values have skyrocketed. And the fair market value of the South Track basically has increased as a result of that North Texas development, but also as a result of Bayside North development. There was an appraisal, you said survey, I'm thinking you meant appraisal, yes? Okay. There's appraisal done of the south parcel alone in connection with the issuance of the Public Improvement District bonds, and that appraisal is over a year old. September of 2017, and values have only increased since then. That appraisal, excluding the marina, was $42 million. The negotiated price, which was negotiated between the city and the Bayside parties, with full knowledge by a potential future development partner, was $37 million, including the marina. So I think that addresses your question in that regards. You know, you're right. Does it affect us? Yes and no. I mean, we're not going to buy the land. We're not going to develop the land. But what that developer pays for that land does have implications on the future development of that land. Absolutely does. Very, very good point, Diane. So it was very important that we negotiated what we believed was a favorable price for this parcel of land to allow the vision to be realized for this south parcel. I think that addressed the first part of your question. Help me with the second part again, I'm sorry.
I just want to know at what return the citizens can hope to get, or is the money that's generated from the project put back into the project?
So the original development agreements with Bayside North and South were that we would put in place a tax increment reinvestment zone, a TERS you may have hear it referred to, where over a period of 20 years, that 50% of the property taxes generated by the Bayside development only would be returned to the developer to reimburse infrastructure costs, and the developer would have to front those infrastructure costs. And the other 50% of the property taxes generated by the Bayside development would be to the benefit of the city and would you know, benefit the entire city, and that's the 20-year original TERS agreement. We have to redo the TERS agreement and bifurcate the north from the south. And we have not finalized any terms with a potential future development partner, because that's something we're doing over the next 120 days. So where that will end up is not 100% assured, but it is the intent of this city council not to change the overall terms of the development agreements substantially. Close enough? So does that answer that question? And then the sales taxes would obviously come to the city also, and there would be hotel taxes and such. Okay? Thank you, Diane. It's back there.
Evening, Louis Frisbee. Diane, excellent question. I was actually going to ask a very similar question. The 119 acres were originally bought for, I'm sorry, the original 262 acres were bought for about $30 million. Now we're purchasing 119 acres at $37 million. When I work out the numbers, that's about a $23 million difference. And I just want to be sure that that difference isn't going to significantly impact the future development, the future developer's ability to get his rate of return or properly develop this property. And I understand that the property has gone up in value, but $23 million is a very big delta.
It could be her rate of return, Louis. I'm not, just a joke. So I'm not sure where the 23 million is coming from because I went through the numbers. But, you know, we have been through that, and I've answered that actually when Diane asked the question. We believe that this purchase price will allow the future development partner to develop according to the original vision substantially.
Good evening, Eva Ramsour, and I'm a 30-year resident of Rowlett as well. And my question is, it's two parts. One question is, we keep referencing the future developers, and if we only have 120 days to close this deal, I would hope and assume that we have some potential future developers in mind, and if you do, who are they? Number one, that's the first question. And my second question is with regard to, I understand all of the explanation that you've given with regard to cost avoidance from the city's perspective with regard to purchase of the land and setup of the infrastructure. However, when we add this many more condos and housing developments in such a small space, I would expect that there would also cause additional infrastructure costs from an emergency response perspective, our police, our firefighters, you know, all of those type of infrastructure. And those costs would definitely be city-related costs. How are we covering that?
Thank you very much. Very good questions. So certainly, we have been working with a future proposed development partner. That's the only way we would have done this agreement. This city council is unanimous and adamant that the city of Rowlett is not going to own and develop this land. There is no way we could close this transaction and negotiate all the agreements that need to be negotiated with, you know, someone that we didn't have in mind at this point in time. We are not disclosing the name of this potential future development partner because this partner has asked us not to. In addition, you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we don't have any of these agreements in place yet. So until we do, we will not be disclosing this partner for all of those reasons. In regards, I'm having trouble remembering the second questions. Public safety, thank you. So when Ms. Lemons asked the question about, you know, what is the return to the city for this development, I talked about there was a 50% TERS reimbursement back to the developer who is fronting the infrastructure costs. Infrastructure costs that in some cases are often borne by cities are going to be borne by the developer in the case of Bayside. But the other 50% of the property taxes are going to the city as a whole, and the sales taxes, and there'll be hotel taxes also. So, you know, an analysis was done on what kind of revenue that will bring into the city versus the costs associated with servicing that area, and we are still very, very far ahead in regards to that.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I want to add one other thing too. When the city agreed to create the tax increment reinvestment zone, what it recognized is that there were extraordinary development costs associated with this property, and there were several of those. One is the overpass that has to be built. So I don't remember the exact number, but it's somewhere around $20 million in my mind, and that was back in 2014 dollars, is what we thought it would cost for the overpass. We did not know at that time whether TxDOT would help us fund that or not, so that was one thing that was in our concern. Secondly, on the south part is that you have an awful lot of land down there that is very low lying. That land would not be developable without actually bringing in some cases, 5, 6, 7 feet of dirt to be able to raise that. So we recognized at that time that there were what we consider to be extraordinary costs associated with this development, not necessarily normal cost. And the one thing I do want to mention and just tag on what the mayor said about value, and that is this: there isn't another 262 acres in Rowlett, because one, we're primarily residential, just to say that. There's not another parcel, not just a parcel, 262 acre area in Rowlett that will bring the kind of surplus dollars to our community that this project will. So think about that for a minute. With all the commercial, the sales tax, the property tax, that will create a much larger surplus than any other 262 acres we have in Rowlett, because we're primarily residential and it's primarily residential property taxes.
You want to come up? Oh, I'm teasing. It was a joke, Brian.
Okay. Ha.
Stanley Pollard, also a 30-year resident as of May 7. Mayor, what I'm hearing is that the original developer the city made an agreement with is going to make a killing on this. But they haven't finished the north side. And as I understand, there's supposed to be a hotel even on the north side. And I don't see any evidence that anything, are they going to be required to complete the north side, number one. Number two, on the south side, are you going to, is there any residential on the south side with being discussed with this new developer? Number three, if there is residential on the south side, are you going to tie the commercial to where it is built either first or synonymous with any residential?
All right, Stanley, that is now you're challenging me with a three-part question, okay? So there is nothing that has changed on the north side. The developer, Bayside, has developed the north side in accordance with the original agreements, and they are still obligated to develop in accordance with the original development agreements. Nothing has changed. And they haven't presented a new plan, and they have been developing in accordance with the original plans, and we expect that to continue. I think that was your first question. Second, you guys got to ask. You got to have to ask me one question at a time, because I have residential on the south side. We don't. The original plan was to have how many residential units on the south side? Mm-hmm. There was originally planned 1,800 of residential units on the south side. The Bayside revised plan that we rejected, if I could bring that page up again, it's on the floor. Actually increased the number of residential units by 152 on the south side, and increased the acreage dedicated to residential by 68.7%. That was the revised Bayside plan that we rejected. So there's a lot of development plans that have to be put in place with this new development partner, but I fully expect to have more residential units on the south side. And then your third question? Okay, thank you. Requiring that the commercial be done before or concurrently with the residential. So this is the Bayside development plan is very akin to a planned development. It was a planned development. And that doesn't mean you can develop this residential piece and not develop all these other pieces in a planned development. That's why we filed a lawsuit against the developer, because they've, in our opinion, violated the development agreement and caused significant damages to the city of Rowlett. So we would expect to do the same thing with the new not to sue, sorry. We would expect to have a development agreement that entails the entire development on the south side, and that indicates all our rights and responsibilities, and indicates all the responsibilities of the development partner to ensure that that development will occur. So you can't force, do you want to say anything? Okay. So the best we can do in regards to that is a development agreement that entails the entire development, and that's what we plan on doing with the south side again.
Robert Van Blumendahl, currently the landowner, Bayside, has a developer who has had much success throughout the world, delivering multiple properties in various configurations, and he's been very successful. He came to us and said that we can't build this viably, and I'm just very concerned that a new developer, when he comes along, has to pay $37 million for the land, then has to build an 8-acre lagoon, a fountain, a conference center, and a 45-acre park. And can he do that viably, or are we going to get him to cut some corners?
So it's important to remember that the development partner is the current development partner. The ownership of Bayside has always been the same ownership of Bayside. The individuals that signed the commitments for the development agreement are still the owners of Bayside. So this whole discussion that a new development partner was brought in is misleading, because the development partner for Bayside was and is the same ownership group. They're the ones that signed on the dotted line. They're the ones that solicited the feasibility studies. They're the ones that worked side by side with the city, with their hired employees, to come up with a shared vision for a development plan for Bayside. I'm not going to talk about whether the new person they hired to revise the development is, better or not than their previous hired people. That's not relevant. What's relevant is that a commitment was made between the city and Bayside partners, and there were obligations and rights of the city, and there were obligations and rights of Bayside to fulfill the provisions of that development agreement. The city fulfilled all of our obligations, and we expect the same out of our development partner. That is why we filed the lawsuit, and then I've already talked about why we have entered into this agreement to purchase the south parcel, because it's very important that we make sure we reach the ultimate goal, which is to develop the land in the best manner that benefits the citizens of Rowlett. We believe that we have the ability to put a new development partner in there with a viable plan. Development plans change. There is no doubt about it. The ultimate development plan that comes out of Bayside South, it won't be called Bayside South, I'm just using that as nomenclature right now. But the ultimate development plans that come out of Bayside South is not going to be an exact replica of what they were prior to the last year. But from an overall macro vision standpoint, we expect them to be a destination amenity development that meets the overall criteria that we have set forth in our vision. And we believe that is feasible. So that's the answer to that question.
And Mayor, if you don't mind, and our future development partner believes in that vision as well. And I think that's important that we say that.
Hi, I'm Cindy Baker. I've been here for 15 years now. And I really am concerned about the future of our city as well. I know that all of the future development that y'all have planned sounds really, really great. But I want to know specifically as a citizen, how much money has our tax dollars went to all of these failed projects or failed partnerships as of now? And what else are we going to have to sacrifice in the future to realize your vision of the Bayside project, which is now 2 parts. One side is Bayside, and the other side is, we don't know yet, other than south side of I-30. We probably should name that pretty soon, too. But what is the cost to the citizens so far, besides us having to wait extra time at all of the signals that haven't been updated? but also to just getting here, like the gentleman in the back said, it takes 30 minutes just to get from one light to another. What's being addressed now to help us citizens as well? So that's two parts. How much have we lost so far?
So I'm going to let...
Plan on. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. See, that's that two-part question again. Brian, you remember the first part because you're going to address that. I'm going to address the second part right now. I've already talked about the improvements that we're going to be making to Miller and to Cheesa. I also want to mention that in the 2018 bond, we approved $2.8 million of funding for right-hand turn lanes throughout the city. If you are familiar with the westbound right-hand turn lane on Highway 66 to go north on PGBT, you can see how much it improved the traffic flow at that intersection. It was very important to us that we help with traffic flow around the city of Rowlett. So we allocated substantial 2018 bond dollars to increase capacity along Miller Road and Cheesa Road, like I already discussed, but also to put investment into, you know, quite frankly, a method that could help traffic flow throughout the city. In addition, we recently put in a traffic management system that was funded with our 2015 bond, and that improved traffic flow along 66, Miller Road, and Rowlett Road. And I'm doing this off the top of my head, but the percentages were on the three roads anywhere from 22% to 37% decrease in traffic time. I understand. I drive in the traffic too. I understand this is a frustration of the citizens of Rowlett. However, I also travel around a lot of North Texas communities, and our traffic is nothing like some of the traffic that are experienced in surrounding communities, including Richardson, Plano, Frisco, Allen. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but I am saying we are doing a lot to address the traffic. I've already talked about the I-30 improvements also. Brian, can I turn it over to you for the cost?
Yes, ma'am. So tonight, I can't tell you a dollar amount that, that our incentive policies have gone to in terms of development, but here's what I can tell you. The city has been very strategic in the projects that they've actually incentivized. We have identified back in the, when we did Realize Rowlett 2020, we identified, I think at that time, was 6 or 7 what we called economic opportunity areas. And we knew to jumpstart those areas, we would have to do some projects that would require incentives. Village of Rowlett was one of those. It's probably the largest one that we've done. We also did Terra-Lago, but Terra-Lago did not reach their or meet their performance criteria, and as a result, those rebates will not be given back to them. Second thing I want to say is that each of these projects where we have incentivized those has involved more recovery of property taxes. So in other words, even like with the Village of Rowlett, although there was some initial infrastructure, then we have a rebate period of about 15 years, which we consider to be a performance issue. And so there's a portion, there's property taxes that will be going back to them during that time frame. After that, 100% of that will come to Rowlett. So I don't have an exact number. All of our economic development incentive contracts are actually online, but I don't know that there's a total in my head as to exactly how much. But I do want to stress this. As we've gone through with other new projects coming in, there's been many of them we've denied any economic incentives because we've already accomplished our mission in that area. There have been a few where we've decided, you know what, we do need to do a little bit more in this area because we're trying to get to grow that area. Downtown is one of those.
And all of our incentive agreements are performance-based, and you know, prime example of that is what Brian just mentioned, Terra-Lago. We took away that incentive because they didn't meet their performance criteria. And this council is not afraid to hold developers to their commitments. You can clap for that, Dan. Mark, I'm going to take this question because this gentleman has been raising his hand, and Debbie wants me to take.
I want to thank you for taking back the incentives at Terra-Lago. I hope you do the same thing at Bayside North. And on top of that...
Are you doing a two-part question again?
No, I just want to make statements. On top of that, the land was purchased for $31 million. They've never paid, they've never been taxed on the $31 million. They were taxed on the upper north side, $3,180,580. This is the 2018 Dallas CAD. Anybody can look it up. On just the north side, that is 7 parcels. 1 parcel on the south side in Dallas County, that was taxed at $5 million. I'm talking value, not taxes. $5,427,920. This land also lays in Rockwall County. Rockwall valued their part at $9,717,452. Okay, the new partner is also buying the boat slips. They're taxed at $2,306,280. Rowlett gets no taxes on that because it's over the lake. I looked it up. Anybody's welcome to look it up.
What is your question, sir?
I have no question. I'm just making a statement.
Okay. Brian, do you want to address that?
Maybe my question is, why aren't they paying their fair share? They're paying less than half of.
Okay, Brian, you want to address that?
I will.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor.
Did you say your name?
Curtis Smith.
Curtis Smith.
All right, one thing I'll say about property tax values is that we don't get to make that determination. That is done by the appraisal district, Dallas County Appraisal District, or the Rockwall County Appraisal District. A lot of factors come into that, including prices of property that's been sold, the way that it's marketed. We don't get to make that decision. All we know is that they have paid in, and I will say this, they have paid in 100% of the taxes that were due, and they have done that.
And those valuations are based on December 31st of the prior year also, and those valuations will be much higher for 2019.
And Mayor, one more thing, just on the marina. You're right, we do not collect sales taxes for the marina slips, as you said. The city does receive 5% of the gross proceeds as kind of a lease rebate that we get from Bayside. And so we do get that money.
Mark?
Wayne Baxter, Mayor, I'd like to ask if the city retained outside legal counsel with the new developer.
Yes, we have been utilizing Lock Lord, a premier legal firm that has great expertise in real estate transactions. They are the firm that helped us with the lawsuit. They are the firm that helped us with the settlement agreement, and they are the firm that will help us with this development agreement with the new partner. And we are incredibly fortunate with the resources that we have from Lock Lord and with our city attorney resources, David Berman, who has so much institutional knowledge and has been working side by side with Lock Lord. The partner that we're working with at Lock Lord is what, David?
Frank Stevens?
No, not name. What is his position?
He's a partner there.
Well, but he has...
You mean the former Texas Bar Association?
Former Texas Bar Association president. So that's what I was trying to get to. Sorry. We are very, very happy with our legal representation. And we deem that very important, Wayne.
I have a question regarding, you were talking about the roads that you're going to be doing around Miller and Cheesai. We live in the Spinnaker Point area, and we had one of the developers several years ago come and tell us that they would not be able to come out of Bayside onto Fuquay. Is that an agreement with the city, or was that just something we were told?
That is an agreement between Bayside Partners and the city.
Okay, so that will stay that way, that they will not be able to open up that road onto Fuquay?
There's no new negotiations with Bayside North, so that will stay that way.
Okay, thank you.
And we deem, can you say your name?
Annette Blacketer.
Thank you. We deem that very important for the neighborhood there, that we did not open up that access.
Okay, thank you. So was this, we came in a little bit late, was this the first proposal or is this a new one?
Is that my March mayor's spotlight?
Uh-huh.
That's details of the new purchase agreement that we just entered into, as well as some historical information on how we got to where we are today.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Hang on.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that access will be open for emergencies only.
Good point. Thank you, Debbie. So that access will only be available for emergency vehicles. Thank you. Speak up anytime, guys. Just kick me.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Jordan, and I'm relatively new to Rowlett, but I feel like this is my home that I love, and I know all of you are feeling the same way or you wouldn't be here. I came from a situation where a community depended upon their tourists to keep them alive. And so during off-season, you really needed to depend on your family to come participate, enjoy the facilities, and spend their money and come and enjoy. And we found that you needed to have a really working relationship with your churches, your families, your community, your restaurants, and everything. It was a very small area, nothing like what we're talking here. But I will tell you, when your locals don't support you and your visitors aren't here, you suffer. So my question is, will we have a working relationship with this development? And the way we worked it is when it's off-season, it's not free to the town or the community. It can never be free. You can't make a living that way, but you might get a discount. You might get the off-season discount, but you want your community to really be involved and be a big part of it. And then you survive when the visitors and the tourists don't come. Because there are down times like that. And some of you may have been involved in that as well. We had a little restaurant, and we'd either be overrun by tourists or we would be empty. And then, you know, the community had to come in and kind of save us. So I'm hoping that you're working with your developer and that you will make it a working relationship with our community, that we have access, and I'm not saying free access because that's really ridiculous, that's not reality, but have access where we can enjoy and we can go, and then we don't have to go when it's crowded. We don't have to go when the convention center's full. You know, we can go when it's on our terms. So that's just a suggestion, a recommendation from my heart, because I've been there, and it's very important that we be a part of it.
Thank you very much. How long have you been in Rowlett?
We've been here almost about 10 years.
Almost 10 years. I thought you said you were a new resident. So the answer to the question is yes, we have to have that working relationship. That's one of the reasons we are at where we were at, because we were not having that working relationship on the revisions to the South development. So that is very, very important. One of the things that has been represented not correctly has been that this is all about the Crystal Lagoon. The Crystal Lagoon is one amenity, and it's an important amenity, and it's an amenity that's not about just dipping your toe into a pool in warm season. It's about the value and the ambiance and the destination the Crystal Lagoon brings to that entire development area. And it's not just about the Crystal Lagoon. It's very much about the show fountain also. The show fountain is something that is year-round, that is something that residents will want to go, sit at a restaurant, on the border of the Crystal Lagoon and the show fountain and enjoy the show and the amenity that brings to the community. That will also attract other North Texas residents, not just the residents of Rowlett. Again, the revised development plan seem to focus so much on the Crystal Lagoon. You've heard me talk about how the revised development plan significantly decreased the commercial and retail and restaurant proposed for the area. That was very important to us, that we are able to not only obtain those types of businesses in our community, but also to realize the type of revenue from those types of businesses. I talked about how the revised plan was going to increase the footprint of the residential development significantly for the south. This town is 80% residential. We have to continue to do things to change that mix, to pull the tax burden away from our residents and into our commercial areas. So it's very, very important. So will swimming in the Crystal Lagoon be free? No. Will the Crystal Lagoon, will our residents have access to the Crystal Lagoon? Yes. Will you access the water in December and January? Probably not, but it's still going to be an environment that is going to be very, very desirable to visit that location. So it's not just a seasonal asset. It's not just seasonal amenities. And you know, the whole development of the area facilitates that, including the show fountain. Anything you want to add?
Good evening, Whitney Lanning. Regarding the agreement of March 8th, is there a provision to extend that agreement if negotiations fail within the 120-day period, and what's the plan B if that happens?
There is no provision to extend that, and Plan B is the lawsuit stands. Ask your... No, the 3/8 contract is hang on. The March 8th contract is an agreement to purchase the South land. By what date? By July 8th. And what happens if we don't make the July 8th date? The lawsuit stands. Okay, what happens to the agreement? I understand the lawsuit stands. What happens to the purchase agreement? Yes. It's null and void. Yes.
Yeah, and Mayor, if you don't mind, just to say this. So if for some reason we're close, I mean, if we're really close, the two parties could agree to extend it, and that would be a choice the two parties would make. But if there's just no way it's going to happen, any agreements that we do between now and then will have some sort of proviso in there that will make those null and void, because we can't have a development agreement with our future partner if we can't close on the transaction.
Can you make a booming voice? He's coming. Oh, no. Can you do them one at a time? Thank you.
So
I like you already, I think. Depends what you're going to ask me.
I thought. Your statements about the plans for the south side with the new developer, does this mean we're still trying to push the issue of the Crystal Lagoon and the fountain on a new developer?
The future development partner is very much in agreement with the vision for the Crystal Lagoon and the show fountain.
And the fountain too?
Yes.
Okay.
We're not pushing anything.
Well,
we are in agreement with vision. So yeah, I guess we are.
Oh, yeah. The world-class marina. Let's talk about the marina a little bit, where it's at today versus where it's going to be a world-class marina. And are the residents of Rowlett still going to be able to afford to have boats on that marina?
So the world-class marina is a long-term plan. I don't think it's going to be early in the development. There's a lot of improvements that have been made to the marina already. This future development partner plans on doing a lot of development, first Crystal Lagoon and the amenities, and so I don't know how else to answer that. Jim, do you want to add to that?
I think the discussion about whether world-class or not is really focused on the improvements that they plan to make relative to potentially having a boat club where folks can be part of a boat club and not actually own a boat there, indoor boat storage. Those are some of the things that were always portrayed as improvements that would happen at the marina. So you know, those are some of the concepts that they're considering for improvements for the marina.
Affordable?
Thank you.
Not
Third-
affordable?
I would say market, Mayor. Market, whatever, whatever the market is.
I mean,
at
there's
the
other
time.
marinas in town, they got to compete based on the value that they provide. So we don't have that pricing. You had a third question?
I'm going to forego that at this moment.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to get this gentleman, Mark.
My name's Ron Morrow. Two questions. The marina you're talking about, he's saying they want it to turn to a boat club. Are private boat owners not going to be welcome at that marina?
Mr. Grabenhorst was just saying it would also include a boat club eventually.
Okay. Well, a lot of the word residence has been used a lot in the south side, the north side, and then, of course, all the apartment building that's going on around town, like down at the George Bush U-turn. Has anything been worked to include the Garland-Rowlett School District and the needs that are going to come from all these multi-housing residents, plus the single-family residents, for the school system to be able to handle the students that we're going to be bringing into Rowlett?
Thank you very much. Do you want to, is that the end of your question? You want to sit and I'll answer that? So one of the directors, one of the school board members is on our Economic Development Advisory Board, and I recently asked for a presentation by GISD on that very point. And they recently provided that presentation. I wish I had the data in front of me. But the bottom line is that GISD has suffered a decrease in enrollment consistently over the last several years. I don't know if you're going to remember some of the statistics, Jim. I have that in my office. But they understand the development plans for Garland, for Rowlett. They understand and are working side by side with both cities to understand what development is available and what needs are going to be for the school districts. They have land set aside and plans to develop new schools. Our biggest issue in the city of Rowlett is not our elementary schools. Our elementary schools have excess capacity. And their GISD's concern in our elementary schools is that we have too much excess capacity. Our middle schools and our high schools are a bigger concern, and Rowlett High School is a very big concern of GISD. And one of the reasons there is because they're implementing new programs into Rowlett High School that are attracting new students, and they don't have the excess capacity at Rowlett High School that they have in their elementary schools. But they plan on, they are working a long-term plan and a midterm plan to make sure that they even out the distribution of high school students in all the high schools. I think there's 7 high schools in GISD. And they have land dedicated in Rowlett and in Garland for future development. And they are watching that development patterns and those proposals and those projections very, very closely.
My name is Sandy Barrow. I'm a little concerned with this lagoon. What are the costs of the maintenance after we build it? And do we have any resource to bring in money rather than it cost us money? And should the development go bankrupt, who's going to maintain that lagoon?
So there are projections of costs on the lagoon, and those have been factored in by the original development partner, and those are also being factored in by the proposed new development partner. And the costs of maintaining the fountain also are all being factored into the feasibility of the development plan. And the original development partners absolutely believed that was feasible, and the new development partner has also believed that's very feasible. If the development were to go bankrupt, then the development turns over to whoever is funding the bonds on that development. It's not going to be a cost for the city or an obligation of the city. It would be a cost and obligation of who is funding those development costs and funding the land purchase.
And Mayor, just there's also a public improvement district. So the public improvement district assesses or provides assessments on the property owners for that area. So therefore, the maintenance would still be the responsibility of those property owners through assessments. The developer would handle that. If the developer went bankrupt and a new developer took over, those assessments would still need to be done. So and from my perspective, then the property owners for all of South Bayside will be responsible equitably for whatever their share is for all of the improvements that are necessary to make sure it continues on. So it's not just, first off, it's not the city at all, it is the developer, but again, for everybody who lives down there, they're going to receive special benefits from that, and they will pay the assessments. Now, having said that, I'll add one more thing, and that is that, you know, as they try to monetize the value of the lagoon through things like paddleboarding and kayaking and whatever it is that they would do there, they would charge for that. I mean, obviously, they're going to receive money from that. In addition, the resort that would be built there, as well as possibly any other townhomes, condos, apartments, whatever it is, they would share in that as well. And so that's what is going to pay for that, and as well as any private memberships that people may engage in.
Thank you, Brian. That was a much better answer than mine. He's coming to you, sir.
Hi, Gunnar Skarbrevic, 20 years. I have some dumb questions. This new developer, no, I got several for you.
I'm just saying, question number one.
Number one, this new mystery developer, I understand, doesn't want his name used. Of course, he's online with you as far as your dream, your vision of the property. He'd be an idiot not to. It sounds like this developer can do everything, including walk on water. But is it feasible? Does that Crystal Lagoon or the trolleys or all that, besides giving you a warm fuzzy, is it going to make sense? You say that the people that get the benefit, that the residents of the South Side, are going to be paying for the maintenance. Well, those are Rowlett residents down there. Those are our future brothers and sisters, our family members moving down there. Are we going to put a burden on them because we wanted a warm fuzzy, a destination site in Rowlett on Lake Ray Hubbard, which any of you who have been around 20, 30 years, if you're like me, that sounds kind of funny to you. Is it the right thing to do?
So thank you, sir, for your question and comments. I think it's been asked and answered, and yes, we do believe it's the right thing to do. We do believe that the benefit it brings to this community, and we do believe in the vision. And the original developer believed in the vision, and our potential new development partner believes in the vision. You know, time will tell. So that's how everything works. Time will tell. But yes, we do. No, it's not a crapshoot. Pardon me? Yeah. Diane stressed, you know, this was a community's vision. This is not about me. This is not about the city council. This is about the community and what the community wants.
Hello, my name is Vicki Cole. I've been a Rowlett citizen now for 25 years, and I have seen the change in Rowlett since I've become a resident here. And we're growing leaps and bounds. I am so excited about this Crystal Lagoon vision that we have for our city. I was highly disappointed when it failed. So now that we have bought it back, or maybe a possible new developer, and we have the Crystal Lagoon vision still for the South Side, Rowlett is made up of 80%, or you said 82% of residents. We're talking about world-class tourist vision. can't we consider something for the residents as well? I thought that over the 20 years that we would have something in place as a world-class health facility, including indoor activities, sort of like Epic Park or something to that nature, to where residents that has put money into the city could benefit from, in addition to the commercial growth as well as the residential of townhouses, apartments, or what have you. But I think that over the period of time that we have so many residents here that has lived in the community, it would be beneficial for us to be able to utilize facilities internal for water activities when Crystal Lagoon would not be available during the season, only seasonal thing, but something that we could have year-round for tourists as well as the residents to be able to benefit from. Will that be something that will be a part of our new development?
So, the Crystal Lagoon, we have talked about, there is some seasonality to it, but it is not just about dipping your foot into the Crystal Lagoon. The vision for the show fountain, we haven't talked a lot about that, and I'm not going to talk a lot about it right now because we're still working on development agreements between us and the new development partner. That is going to be something that is going to be a destination for our residents year-round. It's going to be an environment that you're going to want to go to time and time again. The trail system that is all around Bayside North and will be around the whole perimeter of Bayside South is an incredible amenity for our community that we have not had. That's going to tie into other trail systems in the community. That is the vision, and that was always the plan for Bayside. So yes, I think the answer is yes. Even in the current vision, there are things for our residents to do. And it's not just going to be a one-time visit. It's going to be something that you're going to want to go to time and time again. There's going to be destination retail, there's going to be restaurants, there's going to be amenities that you can participate with.
I'm Deborah Del Regno, and I retired from the City of Dallas in the taxation department. And one thing I'm really excited about and really glad is that y'all have taken this on. Because I too was very disappointed when it seemed like the other people that were in it decided to build all kinds of apartments and things like that. And then when it came to the lagoon, they kind of just chickened out, though they went somewhere else and built a lagoon. So I'm really glad y'all are pushing this, and I think it's great. And I want everyone to know, if you live in a community that is mostly residential, then you are paying a high tax. I don't care where you live. So if you can bring in more business to help you with that tax, it can make a huge difference. City of Dallas, because they had so many businesses, had a lot lower tax rate than a lot of other places because they had the businesses. So I think this will give us a great amount of advantages. I think that from the experience that we've seen with the City Council, that they have held these developers, their feet to the fire. I trust that y'all are going to give us a really good community, and that it's going to be good for us. It's going to be hard for people that moved here 20 and 30 years ago, and they were moving in the country, and it's not country anymore. It's city. But you're going to get some advantages too. And if it's just too much city for you now or later, you're going to be able to sell your house for so much more and go out even further and go into the country if that's what you want to do.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to make a couple comments. You got applause. That's better than I've gotten tonight. I'm going to make a couple comments about what you said. One was, I think you said, and they went and developed a Crystal Lagoon somewhere else. The development partner for the Bayside project did not develop a Crystal Lagoon somewhere else. Other developers have. So I just want to make sure that's clear. In regards to the residential commercial mix, 78% of our property taxes are borne by our residents. And that percentage has decreased since we implemented Realize Rowlett 2020, which was our comprehensive plan developed and implemented in 2011. It used to be higher than that. And part of the goals of Realize Rowlett 2020 was to continue to shift that burden from the residents to the commercial, and we're doing it slowly. Bayside's a game changer. Is absolutely a game changer in regards to that. It's no longer this trickle effect that maybe we can get a percentage point or two away from the residents into the commercial. The other thing I want to mention is our tax rate, and I know this is a little off subject, but I'm going to get on my soapbox. So we do have a high tax rate. But what I want to make sure you know is that the average homeowner in Rowlett pays $1,500 to the city of Rowlett in annual property taxes. That's the average homeowner in the city of Rowlett. For example, the tax rate for Highland Park, and I'm not comparing this to Highland Park, but their tax rate is incredibly low. But the average homeowner in Highland Park pays $1,800 a year in city taxes. Frisco's rate is in between Highland Park and Rowlett's. And the average homeowner in Frisco pays $1,700 a year in city taxes. You can't just look at the tax rate. You have to look at the average home value. You have to look at your home value. If you were going to move your home and move it into Highland Park, or if you were going to move your home and move it into Allen or Frisco, you would be paying higher taxes even though the rate was less. So that's just something a little bit on my little soapbox there. But thank you for your comments. Next question.
My name's Bob Landrum. Following up on the taxes, is Bayside now paying 50% of the construction work in progress and that revenue coming into the till right now?
I am sorry, I did not understand that question. Can you ask that again?
On the taxes that Bayside is paying, are they paying any at all, or are they paying 50% of the construction work in progress right now?
They have paid 100% of their taxes in. We have to take 50% of those and segregate them into a TERS fund for reimbursement of eligible costs that were agreed to in the development agreement for infrastructure development. Did I answer your question?
Yes. Number two, will the tax increment financing district be extended over to the new side, to the south side?
We are going to have to split the TERS into two pieces and bifurcate it, one for the north and one for the south. I said bifurcate twice. That's Brian's favorite word.
Hi, my name's Kash Patel. Just a quick question on the south side. Will you have milestones for the new developer to hit with steep penalties if they're not meeting certain timelines?
That's a really good question. I think we should do that. Thank you.
The other recommendation is the new developer agreement. Will you have a breakdown of what the commercial mix is? As you see, like Harbor, you have restaurant space that goes in there, they fail, and then you're sitting with a bunch of empty commercial space.
So you asked a question if we're going to have breakdowns in the development agreement of the various components of the development, and the answer is yes, we did in the original development agreement, and I fully anticipate we'll do that in the new development agreement.
Okay, and just a quick couple points real quick. For the property tax, I actually own the north side, the hotel, and we are starting construction in about 2 weeks as soon as we get permits, so you will have a hotel on the north side with 13,500 square feet of retail.
I'm so glad you said that. I know that was asked earlier, and I forgot to mention that. Thank you. Do you want to say anything else about that? Do you want to say the name? I don't know if we can. I'd rather not. Okay. Thank you, sir. I forgot to mention that. I don't even know if I was supposed to mention that, but you did.
Hi, my name's Vicki Recker, and I have the benefit of living in the new village of Rowlett. I love it. And I just moved to Texas. I love Rowlett. But I do have some concerns. You know, I've been over to the harbor in Rowlett. There's a lot of empty space. Or Rockwell. You know, I mean, I'm looking over there and I'm going, and we're going to try and duplicate that here. I kind of have some worries about that. And then there's the Crystal Lagoon. The gentleman said something about there might be private membership. What does that mean? Why wouldn't all of the citizens of Rowlett have access to the Crystal Lagoon?
So, was that it, Vicki?
Yes,
Vicki?
that is it.
Okay. So we fully anticipate that the residents will have access to the Crystal Lagoon. What that looks like specifically is still the details to be worked out. But they, the developer, the original developer, always planned on having access to the Crystal Lagoon, and we fully expect that to put that provision in the new development agreement. This development is different than the harbor. I'm not going to sit here and criticize another city's development. I'm not going to go down that path. But there's a lot of lessons learned from developments across North Texas, and all those lessons will be considered and utilized in regards to the development plan for Bayside South. And was there something you wanted to add? He said no.
Sorry, John Plody again. Can you explain to me what what's the term? The art fountain, not the art fountain.
Bifurcate?
The bifurcation?
Show fountain.
Show fountain.
The show fountain. Is this like a Bellagio-style show fountain? Is this like the Fountain Hills, Arizona fountain? What are we talking about as a show fountain?
I'll actually do that one, Mayor, if you don't mind. So this show fountain was, the one in the current vision is 1 acre. And it was designed to use a mist screen. So in other words, the water would come up and it would fall in such a way that video could be shot into the screen, just like if you're a movie theater. And so whatever show they would do, 12-minute show, 20-minute show at a time, then you would be able to watch that video in the actual screen itself. Now, there would be colored water, there would be other things, the water would go up and down and those things too. But that was one of the things that intrigued us the most about it, was this mist screen that you'd be able to show video. And we have seen that in other communities. I think one of the first ones we looked at early on in the process was in Poland that had just opened up. And it's fantastic. And so it's a show. And if you're out there eating at a restaurant or you're just walking around the area and they're retail, you're going to enjoy doing it. And so this was going to be, and it still is, I believe, one of the first fountains of its kind in connection with a Crystal Lagoon as well. So it's going to be a fantastic amenity.
And that show will change regularly, so it's always something new to see. That's what the plans are.
Thank you, Mayor. Stanley Pollard again. This is not directly tied to Bayside, but it is indirectly. Much was said at the very beginning about the infrastructure coming out and around the Bayside project. You mentioned about the widening of Chisa. You mentioned about the widening of Miller Road on the east side of town. What I have not heard was any widening of Dowell Rock, where the 848 apartments, 100 homes on the north side, plus anybody on the south side, that we could control the traffic and have them come north to 66 to all of our merchants up there, rather than making it convenient or leaving it convenient for them just to hop on 30 and go to Rockwall to do their shopping or go to Garland. And because of the infrastructure, I haven't heard anything about Dowell Rock being widened to help with the traffic flow to get those people up to 66.
Thank you, Stanley. So when we were determining allocation of bond funds for the 2018 bond, there were two segments of road that we were also highly prioritizing. One was Chisa north of Miller, and the other was widening of Dowell Rock. We are concerned about Dowell Rock. And we do think it needs to be expanded to another lane in both directions. The improvements that are being made at the Dowell Rock intersection, if I could get one of you two to explain those a little bit more, I think maybe that will help the immediate area of Dowell Rock.
So you're talking about the intersection at 66 in Dowell Rock or down? Say again?
30 in Del Rock.
Yes. So at 30 in Dow Rock, that is going to be actually a part of the tech stock project. So in addition to building the outer lanes, they're going to build the overpass that will get you from north to south of Bayside, as well as they're going to make improvements on Dow Rock all the way to the railroad tracks, or is it? Can you help me? Does it go all the way to Miller, or not Miller, but to the railroad tracks? So those improvements, we believe, will speed up traffic. It will be a huge traffic improvement for that area, but it does not address your question, Stanley, about the need to expand that going further north, all the way to 66, for example. We felt more strategically we needed to address Chisa at this time, and to widen it and get traffic to have another choice other than just Dow Rock, as well as Miller. But as you know, we're only getting Chisa from Dow Rock to Miller. We still need to get it to 66, make those improvements, and then eventually all the way to Merritt Road. That's what we really need to do. And that's going to take at least a couple of bond cycles.
Yes. Another thing is the North Central Texas Council of Governments, I think that's the agency, they marked Dow Rock Road from 30 all the way to 66 in their 2045 mobility plan. So there's also potential on top of the bond dollars that we could get other source funding to assist with that project as well.
Thank you, Blake. And since you mentioned it, Brian, can you also talk about the Dow Rock 66 improvements that are slated?
So right now, this is a multi-agency project. It's going to primarily affect some of the widening right there at 66 and Dow Rock. It will also include some additional turn lane spacing in there. Rockwall County is participating, of course, Dallas County, TxDOT, the city of Rowlett is putting in money for it. And I think there's maybe COG, I can't remember, maybe it's the North Central Texas COG as well. So you got 4 or 5 agencies that are also funding those improvements, and we're well along the way into engineering and design for that. I think we'll probably start 2020. Does that sound right? About 2020.
So that's going to improve that intersection greatly. But we agree with you. And that's one of the reasons Bayside is so strategically important, so we can generate more tax dollars so we can help our infrastructure across our community. Denise, is there anything on Facebook that we haven't been addressing? I think she said we've got it so far. I got a thumbs up. Any other questions?
One thing, I know it's getting late. You're good. I just want you all to know that, well, I'm on the Rockwall County Planning Consortium, and that is the consortium that works on the Rockwall County roads. And I want you all to know that Rowlett is very, very concerned with transportation issues here in Rowlett. Now, I'm on the Rockwall County Consortium because part of our city is in Rockwall County. Now, that particular intersection that we're talking at Dow Rock and 66, that has been on our radar for at least, I know, all the years that I've been on that consortium, so that's at least 5. We do pay attention to what's going on in our city as far as concentrations of areas that has a lot of congestion and things like that. That has always been something on our radar. Please don't ever think that we are not addressing that or we don't have it on the back burner. But we do. We watch our fundings that is available for that, and we work with our other cities, our other program partners. It's always, always on our minds. So even if you feel like the Chisa Road from Miller to Dow Rock is not going to help, I think you'll be surprised at how much that is going to help. Because people coming on PGBT home to Rowlett, well, they're not going to have to go down to 30 and around. They're going to be able to get off right at Miller Road and cut down that way. So we do have a plan. It isn't that we're ignoring everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. That reminded me, the Miller Road improvements is being partially funded by the county, Dallas County, I think to the tune of $2.5 million. Am I close? So give me a nod, Jim? Yes? No? Okay. So the widening of Miller Road and the sidewalk improvements, part of that is being funded by the county, Dallas County. We work very closely with our Dallas County commissioners to make sure that we get our turn on shared funding. I will tell you this, when Mike Cantrell announced his resignation and the candidates were running for Dallas County Commissioner, very early, even before the election, J.J. Koch came and visited, and I took him on a little road trip of Rowlett. And I said, this is what we need, and this is what we need, and this is what we need, and if you win the election, you better understand that we're going to be at your door, and we're going to want our fair share. The problem is they have to allocate that among all the Dallas County communities. And, you know, we got the Dow Rock interchange, we got the Miller Road funding. We need the bridge funding from the Paddle Point Park to PGBT. We need that bridge expanded. In today's dollars, we think that's $18 million. And that's a very short span of bridge. And we don't have any shared funding for that. But that's one area I took JJ and said, this is your next project in Rowlett. We have to have this project. So anyway, we're working really hard with our partners to make sure they understand the needs and the priorities of Rowlett. So thank you for that, Debbie.
Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, you know, it looks like the questions are winding down. You know, as always, we'll hang around for a while afterwards, and then and if you had individual questions or you just want to do some follow-up, we'll always be glad to answer that.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your interest. Thank you.